The hearings have begun. The investigation has begun. And what do you know? Donald Trump is saying, I want to see that doctor in there. He's got to get subpoenaed as well. And Comer making it very clear, they're sending the subpoena today. Just to give you a little bit of background on all of this, don't forget, Joe Biden was the one who didn't seem to know what day it was. According to Josh Hawley, who spoke with Secret Service, he was getting lost in his closet in the morning. You've seen all the tape. We've watched it ad nauseum. It's sort of amazing because, they were calling us, well, actually, KJP was calling us, to be very specific about it, cheap fakes, whenever I was showing you the video of poor Joe Biden not seeming to know what day it was, not seeming to be able to do a darn thing. And you know what? It turns out it's all true, right? All of it is true. And so now this guy, okay, let me put him front and center. Hopefully you'd rather look at me than him, but nonetheless, this is Kevin O'Connor, and he's getting hauled right up into the lion's den with Comer saying, we gave you a chance, buddy. We gave you a chance to do this the nice way, but you didn't want to actually participate. Here he is speaking with my friend and former colleague, and I go on his show a lot now these days too, over on Newsmax, my friend Rob Schmidt. Do you know, the woman who actually, I digress, set up this YouTube channel for me years ago, I never used to use it. Great girl. She was super young back then. She's like, you need to check out this YouTube thing. I'm like, what? Actually, she's his producer right now. So we like Rob, all right, over on Newsmax. I like him and I like his producer. They had Comer on last night and he broke some news. He said he's sending those subpoenas out today and the doctor's the first one to get it.
They delayed a day or two, but we finally got our staff attorneys with his attorney on the phone. And at the end of the day, we made demands that he had to come in and answer questions. They could refuse to do that. So I'm going to announce on your show tonight that he will receive a subpoena tomorrow. Dr. O'Connor will be the first person to receive an official subpoena. We're serious about these people coming in. So now he's going to have to come in and do a full-blown deposition as opposed to a transcribed interview.
Maybe it would have been easier to do the interview. He probably doesn't want to go in because he's a doctor and he's going to cite his privilege with his patient. But, it's a little bit different in this situation because you're talking about the former president of the United States. And if you weren't giving him some basic tests, what was the reason for that? I don't care about protocol. Okay, so you're in your 70s and your 80s. You don't need the test for prostate cancer. But guess what? You're the president of the United States. I think that we ought to be holding you to a bigger, better standard, don't you? I mean, come on. When he doesn't even know where the darn chair is. There was a chair before KJP calls me a cheap fake. There was a chair, but my gosh, boy, did he really want to sit in it. I mean, then there was the Where's Jackie episode. There were moments when he was just zoning out. There were some that really scared me. I've shown you guys some of those things that really scared me. But then there were these other moments, right? Like, for example, when he would lose it in the debate. I mean, that's when it became obviously public knowledge. Well, it was public knowledge. What am I saying? It was just that they were all a bunch of deniers, gaslighting us all the time. I'm like, hey, I'm seeing what I think you're seeing, but somehow the emperor has no clothes really works. Anyway, James Comer, he has started the hearings. Let's listen in because this is big. I consider this biggest political scandal in modern history. You cannot cover up for a president just because you want to keep him in power. If he needs the 25th Amendment, he needs the 25th Amendment. We need that doctor in there. He needs to explain. Either he's a shoddy doctor or he's covering something up. Anyway, let's go to Comer, who had a lot of questions.
I've launched an investigation, or the committee has, we all have, into the role of former senior White House officials in possibly abusing the authority of former President Joe Biden while the former president was rapidly deteriorating mentally and physically. We will be conducting transcribed interviews of a number of former White House officials to understand who was really making the decisions for President Biden. Your group, Power the Future, has expressed concerns that over half a dozen of the Biden administration executive actions, which were signed by the Autopen, related to climate policy, should be deemed null and void, again, due to the fact that they were signed by the Autopen without any public comment from President Biden confirming his knowledge of them. Now, why is it important that the American people know the truth about whether President Biden knowingly signed these orders, making significant and drastic shifts in our energy policy?
Yeah. I mean, like, energy policy is kind of a big deal, right? And by the way, that energy policy is a big part of what contributed to all the inflation we saw. And we got a lot of it. Donald Trump coming out moments ago, I'm going to show you the tape, saying how proud he is that we have brought inflation down. And it's a big, big deal. But anyway, you've got Comer asking the right questions here, because these things do need to be answered. And let's go to Turner, who's answering some of these now.
Thank you for the question, sir. We're looking at this from the sense of deceit of the American people. This is impersonation of the president. Staffers, of course, have a lot of leniency in what they do working on behalf of the president, but these executive orders that we identified, there's no evidence of Joe Biden in first person, in his voice as president, talking about them. And I see some Pennsylvanians on the panel. When you ban the export of liquid natural gas and you never get asked about it in person, one has to wonder if Joe Biden did it or if a staffer did it on his behalf.
You specifically expressed concern that President Biden was not aware of that specific action to implement the executive order pausing liquefied natural gas permits. Now, why are you specifically concerned the president was unaware of that specific order?
Well, there's an anecdote from earlier this year where Speaker of the House Johnson mentioned he was in conversation with President Biden and brought it up. And the president said, I don't know what you're talking about. At the time, that was understood as, wow, maybe the president's a little worse off than we realized. But maybe two things can be true. Maybe he really didn't know what Speaker Johnson was talking about. Mm-hmm. Maybe he had no idea he passed this executive order. And if the president has never asked about it and he hides from the press and there's no opportunity for him to get asked in public about it, how do we know he actually did it? And these are serious executive orders. This is not...
It is bizarre. You know, when President Trump signed his executive orders, we saw him sign the executive orders. He had a big event. He was, they were talking about the executive orders. They said, this is what this specific executive order is. We never saw any of that.
No, and lives were destroyed, sir. And when you ban the export of liquid natural gas, there are hundreds of thousands of men and women who work in the natural gas industry. Lives were destroyed. People went bankrupt because of that. And we have no evidence that Joe Biden himself actually
We haven't found any evidence either.
So that was the congressman actually from Ohio, Mike Turner, Republican congressman, and he's been very much a proponent of increasing U.S. liquefied natural gas exports, suggesting and arguing that it's going to benefit the U.S. economy. Look, I'm just going to tell you, natural gas is a global market. So you can't sit there and say, I'm going to cut it off, I'm going to cut it off. I mean, you obviously want to protect yourself domestically, but it makes sense to be able to have plenty here and then export the remainder, right? Anyway, the issue being that Biden didn't seem to understand or know anything about what he was signing. And that gets back to the very central issue of all of this, which is that you cannot have a situation where you have a president who's mentally incapacitated and nobody's willing to speak up. And instead, you got the Autopen signing off on everything, whether it be policy or whether it be pardons, right? We heard from a congressman actually over on Benny's show earlier this week who said he believed that there was a pay for pardon scheme going down. I'll tell you, they got lots of questions. Donald Trump is right to demand the investigation. Comer's got his investigation. We got investigations galore. I'll tell you, and you know what, before anybody says, nothing's going to happen, I actually think this time you're going to find some stuff out, especially once when we get to the doctor, especially once we see the medical records. If they were hiding stuff there, we got big problems. And you got to get what's her face, KJP, in there as well. The one that is out there trying to peddle and sell a new book. Anyway, I sat down just a short time ago with Congressman Bill Huizenga out in Michigan, asked him about some of these things. Let's listen. Welcome to the program, Congressman Bill Huizenga from Michigan. It is great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Good to be with you, Trish, and thanks for having me.
Autopen, we're saying that people didn't know anything. Biden, he obviously didn't know what day it was. I mean, a lot of concerns about all the stuff that went through. You think about the 8,000 plus pardons in the end. Yeah. Are we going to see much? I mean, is this going to be a full-blown investigation? Because I look at this, Congressman, as one of the biggest political scandals of our generation. I mean, you can't have a president who doesn't know what's up and not invoke the 25th Amendment, for goodness sakes. That's what it's there for.
Look, the irony is that the same people who were calling for the 25th Amendment to be applied to Donald Trump first go around were completely silent when arguably it really was necessary to implement with Joe Biden. And clearly there was not a full understanding, and he clearly was not having his full faculties. And who was running the country is a legitimate question. Who was running the country? Was it Jill Biden? Was it his chief of staff?
Her chief of staff?
Her chief of staff? Was it John Kerry? There's all kinds of rumors around as to who was actually making the day-to-day decisions on this stuff. And I think that's part of the reason why you saw, in many ways, on some of these big issues, people were frozen in place. And then you saw the harder left side of the equation in his party kind of take some control and start running with things that arguably the Joe Biden of old never would have agreed to. And now maybe he changed, or maybe he didn't really, but this was allowed to happen.
I know Comer's out there in front of it. I saw Josh Hawley the other day saying, my gosh, he had heard from Secret Service that he'd get lost in his closet in the morning. So what are we going to do about it?
Both Jim Jordan and James Comer are looking at this. They need to do that. We're going to let those committees do their work, which they need to do. And but this has to get answered. This has to get uncovered, and it's too important. And frankly, this is I think the biggest political scandal in the modern era. If this is true, that Joe Biden really wasn't making those decisions, and that it was a group of other people doing so. This is not just like, hey, I was too busy dealing with China or some other issue. This was, I didn't really understand what was going on, and others were stepping in. That is,
not to mention his health.
And Trish, they put this guy up to go get reelected.
I know.
What would have happened if they truly had hit him in the basement again for another full term, and he didn't actually get exposed on the debate stage the way that it was in front of millions of people, and who knows where this would have gone.
We talked about a whole lot more, and I'm going to get into more with Congressman Bill Huizenga. We'll be showing you that over the weekend, including, Don, your favorite subject, Bitcoin. But anyways, on the House Financial Services Committee, we had a lot to discuss. But his point, like mine, this is a big freaking deal, right? You guys are going to run the guy again? Come on. That's exactly what they tried to do. Hey, we all saw it. Had it not been, and you got to wonder, who the heck was okay with him doing the debate? You guys, your whole little plot kind of fell apart when this was broadcast to the world.
That of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with.
Oh boy!
Look.
Oh boy! Remember this?
We finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because
it was bad, right? It was really, really, really bad. And yet they wanted us to think he was great. Dr. Jill, moments after this disastrous debate that we're all sitting there going, can you believe this? Can you believe this? Can you believe this? She's getting out there saying, oh, honey bunny, you did so great. It's like he learned to use the body or something for the first time, listening to Dr. Jill, right?
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Lied! Yes.
Wow. Guys, this is getting serious, though, because I think a lot of people are going to have to answer some of these questions. We're looking at, for example, who's being brought in by Comer. Let me share with you some of their names and pictures. Taking a look at all of this, you got Anita Dunn that's going to have to come in. You got Ron Klain that's going to have to come in. We already talked about the lawyer, the doctor, which is O'Connor, and Steve Ricchetti. You've got Bruce Reed. You've got Michael Donnellan. All these people that are going to have to come in. You know who I want to see come in as well? I want to see none other than the chief of staff for one, Dr. Jill Biden, because he's the guy that I'm hearing was controlling everything. And interestingly enough, Project Veritas got one of the DNC members, David Hogue, on record, under camera type thing, where he said, yeah, like this was the guy that was kind of controlling everything. And it makes sense given that Dr. Jill was guarding access to her husband. So wouldn't it make sense that her chief of staff then had a whole lot of say on all of this? So you're going to have all these people getting trotted through, and it's important that this happen. It's important that it happen because you can't allow for somebody who shouldn't be the president to be the president. I mean, think about what they were saying. Remember back in the day about how Donald Trump wasn't of right mental capacity, all that stuff that they used to say, and they wanted to invoke the 25th Amendment back then with him. And yet that same cast of characters, crickets. When you had poor Joe getting allegedly lost in the closet, nothing. We heard nothing from them. So I'm telling you guys, you know what? Things have got to change, and we got to have people being held accountable. It's really, really critical right now, super critical. KJP, she's fleeing the party. Remember her, KJP? She's the one telling us, oh, we're the bunch of cheap fakes, for goodness sakes. We're going to talk about that coming up. Quick reminder, we are in the top 100. How do you like that? Top 100 podcasts here. Thanks to you guys. So thank you for that. We're climbing. I think Don pointed this out in the chat earlier on. We were number 52 last week. We have jumped all the way to number 36. So keep it coming. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, make a comment, all that good stuff.